This time, I bought this 69 Chevy C20 pickup sight unseen for $5,000. And I took it on a desert exploration 800-mile road trip and road test. Here's the story. I love my brand new 69 Chevy truck. I'm gonna tell you the story about how I got this thing. I'm gonna show you in detail just how fantastic it is so that you can fall in love with it also. And then I'm gonna hit the road and find out if I can hobble this vehicle all the way home from the Las Vegas area back to Los Angeles, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but I'm gonna take the deep desert roads to do it. I am not taking I-15, no way. Here's how this came to be. I put a post on both Facebook and Instagram saying, hey, I want to take my annual holiday road trip. I want to fly into a city that's within 5 days driving distance of LA, back where I live, and I want to buy a 1975 or older vehicle for $5,000 or less that is going to be at least ostensibly reliable enough to get me home. And so I get a whole bunch of emails, and this is when people step in and they say, you know what, Freiburger, you're a big TV star, whatever. People are always giving you good deals. You know what? That is the exception. The rule is that people think that us hosts have so much money that we can just overpay for all kinds of cars. And I get a lot of reasonable people emailing me stuff, but then I get Phil Safford, and he is completely unreasonable because he says he will sell me this truck for $5,000. This is the gift of the century. Thank you so much, Phil. It is unbelievable how he decided that he's moving down to Mexico. He had to clear out his fleet, and he sold me this truck for only $5,000. And you'll see how ludicrous that is. Now, I know in the comments, there's going to be, let's issue a challenge. Let's see if there can be 100 comments that say, Freiburger, you're an idiot. You can buy that truck for $2,500 all day long in my town, because that's what people are going to say. But the reality is, I think this thing's $15,000 all day long back in Los Angeles, and Phil did me an incredible solid. But here's the story. Once I posted this thing, I got a text from Dalton from Pole Bar Garage. And he says, hey man, I'm coming out to Las Vegas and I'm gonna leave my AMC behind, and you can have it if you want it to take it home. And I said, you know what? I would do that, but I got a killer deal on a truck. He goes, oh man, okay, I get it. I'm having trouble finding a vehicle. And I tell him to post on Instagram. He does. Phil contacts him, and Dalton bought a station wagon from the same guy that I bought this truck from. And I'm guessing that Dalton will get his video up long before I do. All right, let's take a deep dive into this thing. It is the 1969 Chevy C20. So it's a 3/4 ton, 2-wheel drive long bed. As you know, this is the series of Chevy trucks that came out in '67 and ended in '72. You know, guys know the name square body. They know OBS. But you know what I call these things? The action line. Because in 1967, when Chevy first came up with these, they advertised them as the action line, and I just think that's kind of cool. Of course, in 1967, they were trying to make these things more car-like. They were designed by Harry Bentley Bradley, who is a guy who designed a bunch of Hot Wheels toys. He also designed the Dodge Diora for the Alexander brothers in Detroit, a very famous custom A100 pickup truck. Anyway, so 1967 and 1968, they were very car-like, and people didn't buy them as much as they wanted to because they were a little bit too delicate for a truck. In 1969, they stood up the front of the hood a little bit more. And 69 and 70, they put the bow tie right at the front of the hood. This is when the grille changed also. The 69 and 70 has got that bar right across the middle. There's a little bit of a difference in the egg crate behind that bar in 69 and 70. And then, as you know, 71 and 72 was the full-on plastic egg crate grille. So this is, in fact, my least favorite year. However, it is my favorite truck. This thing has 82,000 original miles on it. Phil got it from a guy up in Port Angeles, Washington, who bought it new. And he apparently had a camper on the thing and took really good care of it. And when Phil got it, he's one of those like fiddly guys who wants to make everything perfect. So he did stuff like paint the wheels and polish the hubcaps and put a new rearview mirror on it and make the wipers work perfectly and put air conditioning on the thing. He made the truck great. Let's have a look under the hood. Look how clean this is. Under the hood, we have your standard 350 small block Chevy. It's got low miles. It runs pretty good. I did drive this for about half an hour to get where I am here. And so I know that it runs pretty smooth. I think I might hear a little bit of a lifter clatter that's worrying me, so we'll see that. It has got old Air Products air conditioning on it. You can see that Phil painted up the air cleaner lid and put the factory reproduction sticker on there. It looks like it's got a brand new radiator, the air conditioning, transmission cooler, just super neat and tidy. This thing has factory power steering, factory power brakes, but they are drums in 1969. But look how clean this is. I almost didn't want to drive it in the dirt up here because I don't want to dust this thing out. I got to keep it nice. The transmission in it, by the way, is it a turbo 400 or a turbo 350? You know what? I haven't really looked yet. I'm not sure what they put in these trucks. I'll have to investigate that. Let's look at the interior. This is what I really love about it. The interior is mint. And I don't mean Freiburger mint, I mean mint mint. Phil believes that this is the original stuff. I'd have to look up the seat stitch pattern to see if that's true. Also, did the factory carpet have a rubber mat on it? It might have. If it didn't, this is probably genuine original carpet. And the dash is all original. Certainly the dash pad is. Interestingly, this was a good move. You know, I've had 5 other 67 to 72s, and I always complain that the cab is in fact too small for me. And part of that is because the stock steering wheel rubs my gut. And I'm not going to drink less beer or less Coca-Cola. And so the better solution is what Phil did and put on a factory appearing smaller diameter steering wheel. I got to tell you, it makes it great. He also put on a new chrome bezel on the shift lever indicator. The instrument panel's all stock. It does have the aftermarket air conditioning controller here. And you can see it's got an old Alpine head unit with cassette, which is handy because it comes with a glove box load of 70s rock and roll. I mean, when was the last time you had Montrose and Jason and the Scorchers? I've never even heard of that. John Cougar, of course, Stones, Heart, Foreigner, Boston, Creedence. It's gonna be a good trip. Man, this thing is nice. Let me show you the bed. I can't believe how rust-free this truck is. As a matter of fact, up in the front, the rocker panels that normally rot out right at the carpet line, flawless. Even though this came from the Pacific Northwest, it was in a dry area. It's got just a little bit of rust at the bottom of the fenders, but way better than anything I've seen. And it does have the factory metal bed floor, which I prefer to the wood by a lot. And the bed floor and the tailgate are like flawless. Now this thing has a patina of wear. It's got its dents, its scrapes and everything, but it wears almost all of its original light red paint color. Yes, that is what the paint color is officially called. It has a white top and light red for paint. I thought it was Hugger Orange, but apparently it is not. You know how you close this? You don't slam. You push it shut and close the handle, and it's good. So that's what I know about the truck at this point. I've driven it about 30 or 40 miles, but tomorrow's going to be the true test. I'm going to wake up from my old 50s roadside hotel, hop in this thing, and go into the deep Southern California desert. I'm going to explore Patton's Desert Training Area, meaning desolate, nowhere land desert, and I hope this thing survives for the trip. I may have to do a little tinkering in the morning. All right, see you then. Wow, this thing's great. Look at the 8,000-pound gross lettering on it. I guess that was required in Washington. Cool. Oh, man, I don't want to get dust on my carpet. You know, I hate it when people actually comment and go, Freiburger, that's too good for you, but I'll allow it this time. This is way too good for me. I got to Boulder City, Nevada at night and cruised to find a few cool neon signs. And now it's morning here in Boulder City, Nevada. This place is kind of interesting. It was founded in 1931 to house all of the workers that were building what was then called Boulder Dam, which you now know as Hoover Dam. It's actually kind of weird because the federal government set up this town, which is apparently very unusual. I guess they governed it for a long time too. I stayed overnight at the Sands Motel since 1951 or 1953. It was really good, and ate this morning at Southwest Diner. Highly recommended if you're in Boulder City. Problem is, the truck this morning has a loud power steering groan, and worse than that, the engine is ticking. It sounds like either a, ticky lifter, or maybe the camshaft's going flat and the rocker arm's loose. So I'm gonna have to look into this. And I hope they don't mind. I am here at the BPOE, the Benevolent Protective Order of Elks. And I figure if they're benevolent, they'll let me use their parking lot. All right, first step is easy, power steering fluid. Oh wow, it's not that easy. This thing's supposed to have a remote reservoir, I think, and it doesn't. It's buried all the way down in here. Whoops, you knew that was gonna happen. All right, let me fire it and see if it fixes that problem, and then listen for lifter tick. Fixed. All right, the power steering noise was instantly fixed with fluid, and I noticed the lifter doesn't tick when it's cold, and then it does when it's hot. Now that's good news, because that probably means it's the lifter itself that is collapsing when the oil gets hot and thinner, and it's not the rocker arm, because the rocker arm, if it was all worn out because of a flat cam, or if the rocker arm was loose, it would be clattering right now whether it was cold or hot. So this might be good news. I think I'll let it get hot. Let me go get a listening device. Okay, I can't hear the lifter tick. I'm gonna use an old mechanic's trick, which is big long screwdriver, a whole bunch of 3/8 extensions stacked together. I am going to put it on the engine and then press my ear against it, and it helps you isolate noises inside the engine. It's kind of like when you were a kid and you would stretch a string between two coffee cans, or does any kid do that anymore? And the sound travels through the solid object. That's what I'm doing here. I can't hear anything. I think it's not hot enough. I'm gonna check the oil. Nice and clean, brand new. Oh, the oil is way over full, like by more than a quart. Yeah, the oil line is right there, and the full line is down here. That looks like almost double over full. That can't be possible. Maybe the dipstick's not completely accurate. If the oil is way over full, it can create a problem, because if the crankshaft is in the oil, it'll whip the oil up and aerate it. And air is compressible and oil's not supposed to be. So if it's whipped up with air in it, it can cause the lifters to collapse under pressure. So that's kind of a reach, but maybe. I hate to have to drain oil out of it, but I may have to run across the street, grab a drain pan and a drain pan. I'm gonna burn myself. I got to thinking about it, and I'm just gonna drain all of the oil out of the pan and replace it. So here we go. I got permission to work in the parking lot. Okay, now I see why the power steering was low. That leaks a little bit. Looks like it's a fresh leak too. It doesn't look like it's been leaking a long time. Kind of weird. Stuff always breaks when I get it. It's like it survives 50 years and then I pick it up and it becomes garbage. There is some oil out the back too. So it looks like the rear main seal is leaking now, and it doesn't look like it has been. And so that also leads me to believe that the oil is over full. All right. Oh, wow, that was in there. You know this is going to end badly, right? right in the face. Okay. I got oil directly in the face. That's a new one for me. Fortunately, I had my glasses on. Burns a little. Probably good for the skin, right? I don't know. Did that look way over full? Not sure. I'm the king of parking lot oil change disaster. That is never coming off my glasses. Oh yeah, looks great. All right, I'm gonna let that drain out a bit, throw the plug in, and throw some new oil in. This Valvoline VR1 with zinc in it is my preference for old junk. I'm gonna put 3 quarts in, check the dipstick, see what it says, and then probably go for 1 more quart. Let's do a glug test. So first pour this way, and it glugs, okay? Now let's pour this way, and it glugs. Now let's pour this way, which is the recommended way, and it does not glug. Magic. Bet you didn't know. Well, that was it. It had 5 quarts total in the system, and it only wants 4.5 quarts total in the system. And even at that, it's a spec over full. Now the truck is just a little bit this way, so we're gonna say that it's full. Between the lower oil level that I just did and the thicker oil with the VR1, I think our lifter is probably gonna be solved. I'm ready to hit the road. All right, I guess I've cruised about 5 miles out of Boulder City and no lifter clatter yet. Hopefully it stays that way because I'm now going to Searchlight, which is in the middle of nowhere. While I was underneath the truck, changing the oil, I noticed that it is in fact a Turbo 400 transmission. I had said last night I wasn't sure if they put a Turbo 350 or a 400 in it. I suppose because it's a 3/4 ton, it's got the 400. This thing probably has 410s in it. It might even have 456s. I'm gonna hold it down to about 65 miles an hour. I don't think I've got lifter clatter. I think it's fixed. That was easy. Question is it because the lower oil level or the thicker oil? When I go to Boulder City, I always think of Noel Bullock, and here's why. Noel Bullock started an airport that was right around Boulder City. It later became Boulder City Airport, but it's not the one that's there now, different place. The reason I care about Noel Bullock is that in 1922, he had the very first 4-cylinder to win the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. Basically, he was a kid, kind of a rich kid out of Nebraska, and he had really a gow job. A Model T that had been hacked together, but had a killer radio-headed 4-cylinder motor in it. I guess it wouldn't have been a Model A motor at that time, it would have been Model T. And he showed up and beat all of the big guns at Pikes Peak. And later on, his family was well known for a lot of different things, but automotively, they had a great car dealership in Nebraska that was there for a long time that ultimately, I don't know, in recent years, the past 20 years, they had an auction and sold off most of the collection there, but it's a cool place. I have to assume that Noel saw the opportunity of the Hoover Dam being built, which is why he put together that airport. He was sort of a opportunist, I guess. After he was here, he went to Los Angeles, opened a machine shop, I think doing performance engine stuff. And later on, he established an airlines down in Mexico. And he had a plane out there that had apparently an engine failure. It ditched in the ocean, and the rescue showed up. He wasn't there. He was never seen or heard from again. And curiously, that happened on December 22nd, 1934. And as I shoot this right now, it is December 21st. Tomorrow is the 22nd, marking the 90th anniversary of the disappearance of Noel Bullock. Here's something I found out after the fact. Remember I was in the parking lot of the Elks Lodge? Well, that Elks Lodge was the terminal building for that airport that Noel Bullock built way back in the 30s. Kind of wild. Right behind the building is where the old runway was, and apparently there's still a hangar standing that had been built later on in the 60s or 70s. Well, I've been cruising Searchlight, Nevada, trying really hard to find cool stuff. There's some neat old buildings, a couple vehicles, some mining equipment, not a lot. Now I'm turning off and heading towards Nipton in California. It's 22 miles. Between Searchlight and Nipton, apparently, I didn't know about this, it's Joshua Tree Highway. Joshua trees are really interesting, weird looking, scraggly trees. And I swear they were the inspiration for Dr. Seuss drawing trees. They just look crazy. I think they only survive in the Mojave Desert, kind of like saguaro cactus is only in the Sonoran Desert, or mostly anyway. These are in the Mojave, they're kind of unique. And there's a lot of them right here. As I drive this thing, I'm thinking to myself, this must have been exactly what it was like to drive this truck when it was brand new. I mean, the only real differences from stock are that it has an Edelbrock carburetor instead of a Quadrajet. It's got radial tires that are probably a little larger than it would have had, and it has this small diameter steering wheel. I'm not using the radio or the air conditioning, so that doesn't count. So it must have just been exactly like this. What would it have been, 56 years ago when this was new? I kind of like thinking about that. Off in the distance over here, I can see some of these solar farms they use to make electricity, which to me are a blight on the desert. In fact, they're big and shiny and weird. What they do is they have reflective panels and they all send sunlight up to a big thing that I believe boils water to make steam to make electricity. So it's actually kind of clever, but ugly. Okay, there wasn't much to Nipton. This trip is exactly as desolate as I promised you and as I thought it would be. Still, I'm kind of a desert guy. I don't mind this kind of terrain. In fact, I really like it. I just stopped like 40 miles south of nowhere, and on my Google map on the satellite view, I am able to see that there used to be an old airstrip over here. So I'm just gonna trudge through the desert and see if I can find it. Google Maps is great for this, or the satellite view. Think of all the things that we're able to find that we didn't even know were there out here. And I might find nothing, but I wanna see. Watch for rattlesnakes. Well, here it is. I'm standing right in the middle of this old airstrip, and it's been reclaimed by the desert. There's nothing but sagebrush out here. You can see it's a little bit thinner down that way because obviously humans had cleared this at one time. Why do I care about this airstrip? Well, this whole area was Patton's Desert Training Center in World War II, and they had camps everywhere. Camp Ibis was one of the largest ones over here, perhaps the largest. And I think this was probably an emergency airfield for Camp Ibis's main airfield, and it's not even marked. I like this website called airfields.freeman.com that has tons of history, a huge database of stuff about abandoned old airfields, and this isn't on there. I think it was just kind of obscure, but I've been there. Okay, that was a good story. Look what I found on the way back. Sort of an interesting man-made object. It looks like it goes on a shaft. It has a keyway for a woodruff. It has a set screw. And on this side, it's got three sort of castles, each with a ramp on them, almost as if it mates with another one and is a ratchet. I don't recognize that as being a car part unless, ooh, wait a minute. This is similar to what you would find on a hand crank old car, so that when you're cranking it over and the engine starts, it kicks the thing out instead of taking you with it. That might be what that is. I don't know if it's from a car or maybe aircraft. Just not sure. But you know my policy. Don't take it with you. leave it where you found it for somebody else to enjoy. And where I found it is right there. And how cool is this? When I got back to the truck, I sent my drone up and you can completely see this old airfield. The airstrip is further away from you, and that's the taxiway closer to you. And you can also see that there's roads in between the two. How cool that I was able to find that. You just can't see it from the ground level. Man, lots of miles of open desert. It's a little bit nerve-wracking in such an old truck that you've owned for less than a full day, but man, it's been really, really good. I motored through the little town of Sema, which was basically a wide spot in the road, and now I'm here in Kelso, California, and there's a very cool old train depot here. This place was built in the early 1900s, and of course it was a railroad depot, passengers and everything, but in World War II, there were iron ore and also borax mines near here that were critical to the World War II effort, and so the town sort of sprung up with all the workers coming in, and it became a big deal. And then it sort of went into decline. They stopped taking passengers here sometime in the mid-60s, and in 1985, they ceased operation completely. I was here in the 90s, at which point this place was completely run down. However, they have now restored it. I think in 2005, I read they did the complete restoration on this. So it's pretty neat. It's under construction and not open right now, but cool. Also in Kelso, across the street is the old general store that was run by L.J. Packard. You can still kind of see his name up at the top, and it looks like it was a post office at one time as well. That is a really neat old place. And back further behind that, there are some ruins. There's an old fireplace that's there, obviously from an old house. And you can't help but think, which families sat there and warmed themselves and had a good time around that deal? Anyway, still kind of desolate. I'm gonna motor on. There is a map back there that shows you that we are 40 miles from gasoline in any direction. And I'm down just a little below half tank, and I have no idea if the gauge works on this thing or not. I think I'm gonna be okay, but I may find out the hard way, or I may have to buy like $6, $6.50 gas in Amboy, which will be my next stop. I made it to Amboy, California. Yep, this is Route 66 and the famous Roy's Motel and Cafe. I was just here 3 weeks ago for another episode that you should go watch on my channel. It is Route 66 just in California, and it's pretty good. I stopped here, told you the whole story, investigated around, and for that reason, I'm not gonna do it this time. The sun is just about to drop behind that mountain, and so I'm thinking it's gonna get cold and dark. And the next thing I'm gonna see is my hotel in Twentynine Palms. I drove into darkness into Twentynine Palms, California, which, by the way, has way more than 29 palm trees, which is either an over-deliver or a disappointment, depending on how you look at it. Today, more desert exploring, but I have to tell you, I feel guilty. I mean, this truck's way too good for 5,000 bucks that I paid for it. And I'm probably letting you down because of the reliability of this thing. I'm supposed to be buying cheap beaters and fixing them on the road while taking road trips. But I will tell you, the power steering pump is screaming on it. It's making that whirring noise, so that might be an issue. Now, as I've gotten to know the 69 Chevy a little bit better on my trip, I have discovered some extra character of the thing. I know that you know the benefits of the old man truck with the old man mods. This doesn't have a lot of them, but let me show you some of the key stuff. First, let's go inside. All right, inside, overlook the radio, although it is a cassette tape, and the air conditioning, and look right here at these two little holes in the instrument panel. That is the screw pattern for a CB radio microphone holder. So you know this guy had a CB mounted under there. That's pretty good. Better than that is under the seat here, look at the emergency reflector. So if you've got trouble, you fold that out and stand it up and put it on the highway. Pretty great. But wait, there's more. Let's go look at the back of the truck. Couple things on the bed. First, you can see where it used to have pinstripes on here. I honestly don't know if they were factory or not, but it would have been an old man thing to add those. Next, the side door that's aftermarket that goes to a extra fuel tank that doesn't work. Then of course, you have all of these hooks right here, which I don't think those were ever for cargo. Aren't those for tying down a camper? Maybe. And I know it had a camper because it's got the wiring sticking up right here. So that's kind of old man. This was probably a law in Washington, but I really like the fact that it's got the 8,000 pound gross on it. Look at this rear bumper. That is old man greatness from the 70s. But look at the giant flap under here. Somebody's gonna have to educate me in the comments. That's not really a mud flap. I think it was designed to keep air from whipping up behind the truck and putting dirt on the back of the tailgate. I'm really not sure. Tune me up. One thing I noticed, however, is under here, there is a big sliding mechanism. And once again, that shows camper because you take the bumper and you can slide it out if you've got one of those campers that sticks out to about here. So that's good old man stuff. There's a little bit more here on the outside of the truck. See this right here? This, I remember my disgusting 69 Mach 1 had one of these and people ask me all the time what it was. That is for a car alarm that's no longer on the thing. But that's what that's for. I've honestly never seen one with a little flappy cover on it, so that's pretty good. Now, look at the side of the door. There's rivets, a bunch of bolts. This thing must have had 3 different mirrors on it. I can see there was one that was mounted right here, and probably those big giant ones for towing sticking out here when it had the camper on it. And the guy I bought it from put on these sort of more sleek mirrors. Over here, normally I would think that these screws were for one of those brackets that goes up to a camper, but it doesn't have them on the other side. It does have a couple of holes here, maybe for a CB cable. It must have had an antenna on it somewhere. All right, let's look under the hood. The main deal here is that he had it set up for dual batteries. There's an extra tray, and once again, this has got to be the house battery for the camper. And over here, there are a bunch of, I think, probably breakers, and then a big constant duty relay or solenoid so that you could switch back and forth between those 2 batteries. So that's pretty good. And I just thought of one more thing up under the back that is great. Hanging right here on the frame is a little speaker that would have been an aftermarket backup beeper. You know, you put it in reverse, beep, 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 beep. That's what that was. Only an old guy in the 70s or maybe in the 80s would have installed that. So those are some things that amplify my affection for the 69 C20. There's a couple of things that Phil added to it that are also pretty good. Right here is a powered by Oli sticker with Don Prudhomme's snake logo, designed by Kenny Youngblood. And he was sponsored partially by Olympia Beer at the time. Phil told me that he actually picked that up as a kid at the drag races and put it on the truck once he got it. And on the other side is an original 1977 Fall Nationals NHRA participant decal. So that's also pretty neat. It's also on a little bit crooked, which drives me nuts, which I wouldn't expect from Phil because otherwise he was a detail guy. All right, I'm out of here. I'm gonna explore Twentynine Palms a little bit and then head over to Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree is kind of a place for, urban granola people to come feel like they're visiting the desert. And there is some cool stuff there, but I had to blow right through because there was so much traffic. However, there is one touristy place that I would recommend. It's called The Station, and they've got some cool stuff there. This place called The Station in Joshua Tree, California is a 1949 Richfield gas station. It's been converted to a gift store, and it's got a really cool vibe. And a muffler man. Out front, they have a VW Thing or Type 181. These were sold in the United States only in 1973 and 74, and then government safety regs essentially outlawed them. They're based on a World War II Kubelwagen, or the 60s military or Kurierwagen. They were sold to civilians and military outside the US through 1983. They're basically a VW Bug underneath. This is a Boonie Bug. It's obviously a mid-70s thing. It's so funky. These were a kit car that was based on a shortened VW bus chassis. The first one of them debuted on the March '74 cover of Popular Mechanics magazine, and it had plans on how you could build your own. Out back is a great patio lined with the best Swiss-type jerry cans. They've also got a bunch of Mexican blankets for sale at this place, and you know what? They are good. Good quality, not like the junk you get in gas stations these days. And now I'm blowing through Yucca Valley, which is basically chain store heaven. And we're going to a place I've really wanted to go and I've never been. It is Pioneer Town. Well, Pioneer Town was a bust. What it is a movie set. It was built in the 40s to look like an old Western town because there were so many Westerns shot back then. I thought that it was going to be all of those fake buildings actually turned into a real town these days. It's not. It's much more of a tourist destination. Thing is, they have signs that say explicitly you may not photograph anything here for social media or YouTube. They don't want you exploiting it because apparently they still use it as a movie set, and obviously they get paid for that. So I wasn't able to film it, and now I'm moving on just into the beautiful rolling hills of the Southern California desert. Bam, change of scenery. Yesterday I was in Joshua Tree Desert, and today I'm in Palm Tree Desert. So yesterday I ended up having a complete change of plans for this trip. And so I cannonballed down here. I'm south of Indio, California, where I woke up in the land of date palms, absolutely everywhere. If you've eaten a date, probably anywhere in the United States, they probably came from this broader region. Now, my change of plans is that I was able to find some parts that I need for a project vehicle that's also going to be in a future video. I'll tell you, there are a pair of bucket seats that I'm gonna go get down south of the Salton Sea. I think it's in Holtville, California. And I'm not gonna tell you what they're for. Maybe you can figure it out by looking at them, but I gotta go pick them up because they've been hard to find. And that's my plan today, is to keep cannonballing. Now let's talk about the road trip and road test of the truck. The first time I filled this thing up, I calculated it at 12.6 miles to the gallon, and I thought, that has got to be bogus. So I did it again when I filled up this morning, and it got 12.4 miles to the gallon. This thing gets 12 mpg. That makes no sense to me. And in case you're wondering what I mean, it's too good. Not that it's horrible. That's actually way above my average. Also, yesterday, I was concerned that I could hear power steering pump whirring. Well, it turns out it does that when it's cold, and once the fluid warms up, it's okay. And so, the C20 is really good. Let me hit the road. I have to head down south here on Highway 86. I'm gonna have Salton Sea to my left, and I will eventually get to where I gotta pick up these seats. I'm scared to get dirt in my truck because it's so good. I'm heading down the west side of the Salton Sea, which is a man-made sort of saline body of water that I'll tell you about later in the show. But I'm cruising through a community called Desert Shores, and this was one of those places that was just full of hope in the 1950s when it was a resort town, and frankly now, pretty run down. Right now I'm headed out of here. I'm going down almost to Mexico to pick up these seats. I blasted down past the Salton Sea and I got down here to Holtville, California, and I bought the seats off this guy. I thought it was a little weird to film at his house, so I didn't do that, but you can see they're loaded in the back of the truck. The question is, what do you think that those seats fit? Have a good look. There's two front buckets and a center sort of buddy seat thing. And there's a rear seat back there that's all wrapped up. So see if you can guess what that's gonna be, and you'll see it in the vehicle in an upcoming episode on the David Freiburger channel. But now I'm back in the C20, and I think I'm gonna go explore some of the abandoned stuff that is around the Salton Sea and tell you the wild story of that whole place. I ended up cruising around the little town of Brawley, which I've been through before and just sort of blasted by on the highway. Thought it was not much more than a bump in the road. But in cruising their downtown area, they have some cool stuff here. There are some very neat old buildings and old auto parts stores. I found this one thing that said Quaker State Oil, obviously painted on the side of a building a long time ago. There's just some neat stuff. I did a little bit of local snooping, and there's a building for lease over here that was a glass shop, and it has really faded lettering on it that I couldn't quite make out, and I thought it said Shank and something. It says Shank and Kretz because I found another abandoned building on the other side of town that actually had that logo, Shank and Kretz. So maybe they had two locations, maybe they had one location and moved. Someone from Brawley can tell me. Even the old Foster Freeze looks like it was a good old drive-through at one time, or drive-in, I should say. You always got to take the back alleys and stuff to look for good signage. Samurai! Look at that old service center. Look how long it's been here. It says Right and Night. Oh man, and they have a good 73 or 4 Charger over there. Wonder if they need that. Oh! And a good OBS truck. Right and Night is great. There's a lot of good auto parts stores right here. I just drove past Right and Night. There's J&M Auto Repair. There's also the machine shop and auto parts place that has the cool old oil sign painted on the building. I waste so much time cruising little towns like this looking for neat old signage that no one else cares about. Okay, that's it for Brawley. Pretty good. Gotta keep heading north. Now I'm in a little town I've never been to before called Calipatria, and it's got some old stuff. Ooh, what does that say? Something accessories on that fence. All right, I'm gonna cruise this place and see if we can find anything good. Big bump. Ooh, that guy's a scout over there. I don't know what makes one old building better than the other, but when they're automotive related, they're just better. This is an old Unocal Calipatria station, JF Petroleum Products. And here comes the Calipatria claim to fame. They have the world's tallest flagpole. It's pretty tall. All right, glad I didn't go through life without missing that. Okay, not too much in Calipatria, but I have a new expression. That is, you don't know until you go. And I always go. In the quest for accuracy, I had to look up the actual pronunciation of this town, and I discovered something interesting. Calipatria is a portmanteau. A portmanteau being a combination of two words into one. The greatest portmanteau of all time happens to be spork, which is, of course, I don't even need to explain this. It's spoon and fork. It's my favorite portmanteau. No, Calipatria is a combination of California and patria, which is apparently the Spanish word for homeland or fatherland. So there you go. Not Calipatria, Calipatria. And now I'm leaving Calipatria. Next stop, Nyland. Now I am cruising Nyland. Maybe it's Neeland, who knows? I butcher this stuff. Oh, I see a couple cool things down the alley. It's always really good if you cruise the alley. Good old Ford flatbed. It's amazing how many of these little towns I have not been to. When we were in Holtville, we were only 20 minutes from Mexico. So I just don't spend that much time this far south and inland. Look at the cafe sign. That cafe is no longer there, but man, the sign is good. Guston's Cafe, 24 hours, gone. Look at all of these industrial trucks that are all old parked here. The only one I recognize is a Metro van and a bunch of Internationals and roughly a 65 or 6 Chevy. Man, I just don't know that much about the heavy duty stuff, but it's cool. Old tractors. I need Brian Loans for this. And now I'm leaving Nyland. The best part here, I would say, were the signs. The old cafe sign, and then that cool rundown building with the garage sign painted on it. Man, that was great. I love old garages. Oh, I forgot the other good thing about Nyland was those trucks that we saw. Wow. Nyland had quite a bit of cool packed into very few square miles. It's a low acreage town, but had the weird castle, the cafe sign, the old trucks, the old gas station, and the great garage. Plus whatever this old abandoned thing is off to the side that's covered in graffiti, so I'm not showing it to you so that I don't glorify graffiti. 69 Action Line truck, it's pretty good. I made it to Bombay Beach on the east side of the Salton Sea, which is right there. It's massive and it's man-made. The tale of this place is nuts. In the early 1900s, they wanted to take this desert and turn it into farmland, and so they wanted to bring in some water. Well, long story short, they ended up flooding the entire valley using the Colorado River. And then it turned to disaster. By the 1970s, there was an actual hurricane here. That just doesn't happen in California. And then by the 80s, the water, because it's landlocked, it leached a bunch of salt out of the soil and it became saltier than the ocean. Then a bunch of farming chemicals washed into it. That killed all the fish. The birds ate the fish. That killed all of the birds. It was a complete disaster. And once it started drying, there were windstorms that picked up the dust, and it had a bunch of chemicals in it from agriculture. And that started giving people all sorts of problems, asthma and other kinds of lung death. And so people vacated. The thing that's unusual, though, is that in the 1950s and 60s, this was a major resort area. Both Bombay Beach and on the other side, there was the famous Salton City Yacht Club. And it drew all kinds of dignitaries. This was a big, big attraction. And racing-wise, there was the Salton C500, a giant oval race for boats that happened here in the late 50s and I think early 60s. It was attended by people like Rudy Ramos, and Mickey Thompson raced a boat here. So there's a lot of history, but unfortunately, it's very, very depressed. All of that environmental disaster pushed everybody out of here. here. Now, the good news about that, for me, is that it preserved a bunch of old hotel signs and buildings and places that look just like they did in the 50s. And those signs have so much hope to them. You know how people designed stuff in the 50s? And they're still here to look at for guys like me, even though the place is pretty much ransacked. But here at Bombay Beach, it's actually coming back. There's a community of artists who is sort of coming back in here, as you can see by the placement of stuff like this on the wreckage of Bombay Beach. But my job is not to hang out on the beach, but to go look for the cool abandoned stuff. Let's do it. I am realizing I have actually been here before. I thought I hadn't been to Bombay Beach, but then I see this guy's flat fender up here, and I am reminded of a story. Rick Payway and I were down here four-wheeling one time in some kind of flat fender Jeep. I don't remember which one. And we got stuck, and this guy happened to come pull us out. And then we sat there and had a campfire and drank beers with him and hung out for the night. I think he had a helicopter or something too. So yeah, I've been here before. You know, I said I was gonna hunt around for all the old signs and everything. I found some of that on the other side of the sea, but over here, it just really is an art installation now. A lot of people putting a lot of effort into just making creative stuff. The Bombay Beach drive-in with a whole bunch of scrapped old cars looking at the side of a trailer, which would be the movie screen. That was cool. Gotta give them credit for that. Now I'm rolling out of Bombay Beach and I'm looking at this ski inn. Opened. Glad to see that actually in business. Cocktails. That place is pretty good. And finally, the last resort. I like it. After Bombay Beach, I drove into a great desert sunset and found one more old gas station. And at this point, the sightseeing part of the trip was over. Last night after the Salton Sea area, it was just nighttime, so I cannonballed, and now I'm home 821 or 2 miles later. And you know what? I love the C20. This thing is really, really good. Thank you again, Phil, for virtually the gift of this truck. It is so smooth, so nice. It actually did get 12.5 miles to the gallon, and it rides way better than a C20 should. I've got the engine sorted out pretty well. There's still a rattle somewhere that's driving me nuts. The power steering pump is still bad. It has some other little things that I would like to do just to bring it up to the level of daily driver, because it is my hope that I'm gonna be able to keep this thing and upgrade it. You know I've got 36 cars. You know I have to buy and sell stuff all the time, so I can't make a promise, but man, it feels like family. You know what, do me a favor, buy some merchandise from me and share my channel with everybody that you can. It is the David Freiburger channel. I'll see you next time.